How are you? I'm back. Bit of a break in the videos. I've actually been a bit under the weather since you last saw me. But talking of the weather, we've all received hopefully a bit of welcome rain over the last week to 10 days since you last saw me. Today's video is just going to be a bit of a walk and talk, a bit of a roundup, a few bits and pieces that I think are going to be interesting for us to look at since the last time I did a video. So let's see what there is to look at today. And then shortly after filming all that, all went a bit wrong. I started going downhill a little bit, possibly rushed myself back to work a little bit too soon, but then had the deep joy of someone deciding to T-bone the phone connection box at the end of our lane, meaning that we didn't have broadband for around about 10 days and have had signal issues ever since then. So not been great for uploading videos, I'm afraid. So today's video is now going to be a bit of a montage from that I recorded at the beginning of June in a green check shirt to where we are now in the third week of June in this check shirt. So I'll be bouncing between the two, catching up as we go on what I saw at the beginning of the month and where I am now. There's been quite a bit going on in between times as well. And geez, it's got hot.
I'm at the water, so and it's so hot. Oh God, it's so hot.
So come with me whilst I do a bit of a roundup from what I was looking at the beginning of the month and how things are looking now and a few other bits and pieces in between. First port of call is just have a quick look at a reseed that's gone in this spring. It's been established quite a few weeks now, and of course it's gone through that really dry period of weather. It's only just had the moisture of much use over the last week to 10 days, or the first week of June now. And the report is that it's come in some areas, but in some regions, as you can see behind me, and also especially further over the field, it's really quite thin. So we better just take a look at this and see what's going on. And as you can see, establishment is fairly variable, but again, we can sort of give a little bit to that for that intense level of dry and hot weather that we have had. The clover's established, the ryegrass is established, but it's further over that side of the field that's concerning me, a little bit thinner. But also we appear to have some friends who like this field. So why are they here? If we look at where the plants have established, we've got good establishment of the perennial ryegrass and the clovers. They've come. But also if we look around about, the seedbed's not been too bad. It's been a relatively good seedbed, but we can see that there's new seedlings of both perennial ryegrass and also the clovers only just emerging. So straight away we've got mixed emergence, haven't we? We've got plants that have established well, but then also those that have only just established because the weather's come and we have had that bit of rain. So we've got a bit of improvement yet to come from this, but is there anything still that's making this crop struggle to establish? One thing is there is crow damage here, so have we got a bit of a pest that's also taking some plants out as well? Now I've just done a bit of digging and I can't find any pests, but as you can see here in my hand, the seeds that are literally only just starting to shoot now. I think all this crop needs in the first instance is actually time. There's still a lot of seed that sat in the seed bed that has been waiting for that bit of moisture. So I think recommendation is going to be leave it, give it some more time. And I think those crows are only here just because they are hungry for some reason. They seem to be fairly active at the moment, looking at maize crops in particular, and also where there's new seeds that they can get a bit of a bite. But I don't think they are adding to the issue. I don't think there's pests under here that they're looking for either. So overall, bit of time, and we'll wait and see what this crop turns into in the next couple of weeks. But the grower's right to be concerned in this instance. If you look behind me here, as you can see, the grass has established relatively well. But if we pan round to this side, you can see this is where the big question lies within this crop. Actually, the only big difference between the two regions of this field is soil type. The seed bed where the grass is established really well is a lot finer. So we've got better seed to soil contact, probably better moisture retention as well. And that behind me here is really quite cobbly. So we've got less soil to seed contact and less moisture content. So hopefully, as I say, next few weeks, bit more rain on this going forward, and this area should look different again. So I'm now back at this spring reseed where we had that really patchy establishment to see how it's progressed. Like I say, we have had a bit of rain since the first video, so everything from a distance looking fairly green, but is it green for the right reason? Bit of weed in there, but let's go and see how those areas of the fields that are really struggling have hopefully filled out a little bit. So as you can see, where the crop had established, even though it had looking a bit thin, we're really motoring on now. We've got good establishment, good bit of coverage. Amazing what a bit of moisture and heat will do. But it's actually the far end of that field where we had issues before, wasn't it? Where that seed hadn't really germinated because of the seed bed. So let's make our way over there and see how it's looking now. So here we are now at the other end of the field where we had that really thin establishment only a couple of 3 weeks ago. It is coming, it is slow, but overall it is improving. As I say, the seed bed in here is making the massive difference, and even in the areas that it's looking really thin, actually we've got plants that are only still just germinating and establishing. So it is still looking like more time. No more seed needed, and if it is that the field does finally establish with a few patchy pieces, then yep, we'll look to possibly seed a bit more over into some of these thin areas, but overall, again, just a bit more time. Ultimately, I guess you could really see this field almost as a bit of a metaphor for the year that we've had so far, couldn't you? It's just really frustrating. There's nothing else that we can really do. We can do things that might make us feel better by having a bit of a go, adding some more seeding, but ultimately this is down to the conditions of the year that we're being given. Nothing's going to change that. Next on the list is to have a walk of a spring sown SAM3 Herbal lay multi-species mixture. So let's go and see how this one's looking now. Now, if you haven't seen it already, please go back to my previous video where I explained everything to do with herbal lays, multi-species mixtures, whether they're for conventional use or within their use of schemes. Hopefully busting some of those myths about how these mixtures can or can't perform, how they should be formulated to ensure that we're maximising production out of these mixtures, but maintaining the environmental benefits that they can bring. Now, when it comes to establishing any mixture with especially a high legume content, we need to bear in mind that our options for controlling potentially weeds within any reseed are going to be limited. Think forward, think about the ground that you've got. Has it got a history in terms of a high weed burden pressure? Could there be a big weed ingress within that seed bank that you wake as you establish these new mixtures? Within this crop, the biggest weed abundance within it will probably be fat hen. Overall, it can be a little bit daunting and it can be a little bit scary in terms of how high some of these numbers can be. But to be fair, something like fat hen, I don't tend to overly worry about within these types of mixtures. Look at taking a nice first early cut just to manage the numbers and the overall population of these sorts of types of weeds that, to be fair, tend to die out after they've had a bit of a cut anyway, and the rest of the mixture can carry forward. Let's have a look at what it's looking like. So this reseed was established around about 6 weeks ago. From my previous video, you'll remember me talking about the benefits that the likes of the plantains and the chicories in particular can bring in terms of drought resistance. It's actually been quite a standout thing to see that even throughout the dry conditions of establishment, the plantain and the chicory really did manage to get away. That said, the grass and the clovers have also come really well. There is, yes, quite a high pressure in some areas of this field of this fat hen, but it's all about balance. If it is that the weeds that are in your crops are potentially swinging the balance in terms of their favour, then something needs to be done. It may well be an early grazing or, as I say, an early cut. But actually, this overall balance is pretty well equal. I'm not concerned in terms of the level of pressure of weeds in here, and as I say, they will be taken out with that first cut. Now, I'm sure many of you at home are catching up on the new series of Clarkson's Farmers we're doing at home as well. These CSAM3, GS4, SAM3 herbal lays, multi-species mixtures, whatever you want to call them, has been quite a hot topic of conversation in this series so far, haven't they? Caleb didn't sound like he was a big fan from his experiences of them previously. As I say, my previous video went through all the ins and outs of the importance of maintaining the quality of these mixtures that we're formulating to establish to either grow conventionally or meet the aims of any environmental scheme perhaps. Making sure that we do maximise the benefits that these types of crops can bring, the diversity, the quality, the overall protein, the nitrogen fixing that they can provide. But as I say, making sure that we maintain the quality of those mixtures so that we don't have those bad experiences with these types of mixtures is crucially important. Hopefully, what my previous video showed and the likes of this behind me paint that picture in terms of what they can provide if done correctly. Now we've come back to have a look at this spring reseed for the SAM3, the herbal mixture, multi-species, whatever we want to call them. This has had that light cutting, as I said in that previous video, and as you can see, look what's showing above the surface. It's those herbs with that big taproot and that drought resilience. Again, from that previous video that I made talking about the benefits that these sorts of type of species can bring, even after 48 hours of first cut being taken on these, a light first cut just to nip them off and get rid of that weed, they're already showing their differences. Again, with the legumes in there and the clovers, really showing that benefit that they can bring, especially through the dry periods. Next up on today's list is to drop in to have a look at the SAM3 cutting mixtures that I showed you only a few weeks ago, having their first cut silage taken. We're now heading into second cut season. And for a Herbal lay multi-species mixture for second cut, they're not looking too shabby, are they? Now, regardless of the dry weather that we've all had over the last few weeks, and yes, we have received a bit of rain in the last week to 10 days, these mixtures have really held themselves together well. They've gone through the motions, they've grown really well. The clovers and the plantain have really done their thing in terms of overall resilience. Looking into second cut, this is ideal opportunity now to take these. These crops are just starting to go into seed head a little bit in a few areas, so this is where we need to now take this crop to maintain overall maximum quality and yield. But it's grass that's going to seed that I now want to discuss. It's been a hot topic of conversation this spring because of the weather that we received and how to best manage that. In a year such as this, how to manage seed that has gone to head, especially through very dry conditions, becomes a very hot topic of conversation, and how to best manage that. So let's look at the ins and outs of how to achieve overall forage quality in a very testing period when all you've got is grass wanting to race away to head. Now, for as much as grass can give for us in terms of production and overall forage, it doesn't actually care about us. Something quite hard to hear, isn't it? And especially in years such as this, it's really shown that grass, it can be at times really quite selfish for what we want it to do. But we need to bear in mind the considerations that this plant is going through, or any crop can go through, in terms of how they react and how they perform, especially through periods of stress. Now, the stress point for this season so far, after a very wet winter, has actually been ironically drought, hasn't it? The large parts of the UK have all seen very extended dry periods. So what is it that these grass mixtures, or any forage crop or any crop in particular, goes through and thinks about during these purposes of stress? Ultimately, it's self-survival. This crop thinks nothing about the fact that it needs to produce forage for you, or at least you want it to produce forage for you, whether that be cutting or grazing. All it's looking after is itself, self-survival. Yes, we can try and manipulate as much as we can through variety selection, heading dates maybe, or even the parts of the farm that we ensure that these crops are established to limit that level of stress. But it still needs managing when that time comes. When these crops take those decisions, take the lead into their own hand and make those decisions for themselves. So when it is these grass crops in these points of stress decide to take the decisions into their own hand and throw up a seed head, we need to be the ones that make the decisions as to how we now manage that, to assess that point of crop, to assess what we're actually going to achieve from it. Because leaving it to just get on and hopefully do a little bit better probably won't be the outcome that you're looking to achieve, and actually significantly impact overall forage yields in a point of stress that we really need to avoid anyway. As a plant, grass grows as a tiller-based system. The grass will throw up several tillers and at a certain point decide that one or two of those tillers will become the leading tillers to produce seed heads. All the way up until that point, this plant will be lush and leafy, producing high protein forage throughout the plant. As soon as this plant decides to throw up a seed head, all that direction and decisions change. This plant is now solely focused on producing those seeds and pumping everything into those seeds, not your forage quality for either grazing or cutting, just the overall production and survival of these seeds for the next generation. Now, when it comes to cutting grass for silage, I think we're all fairly well versed in ensuring that taking a crop just as it's coming into seed, or just before, hopefully, is the best point to take that crop to ensure overall quality. Goes back to the fact that we get that better quality because that plant is focused on not producing seed at that point, or hasn't diverted its attention to. But the most important part when we're looking at managing crops that are going into stress conditions, and especially going to seed, is actually for grazing. Making sure that we manage these crops is important to maximise overall quality of forage for grazing in these stress periods. So how are we going to do that, and why are we going to do that? For me, it's the most simplest bit of kit and one of the most important parts of grassland management kit that you can have. It's dragging that topper out. I almost filmed myself at home topping a field only a couple of weeks ago that had gone too far for me. It had all gone to seed and the quality just wasn't going to be there. And I thought about videoing it, and I thought actually maybe this isn't going to be something that people find relevant. But since then, all I've seen online is actually farmers throughout social media potentially asking for advice from other farmers. What would you do with this crop that's just bolted to seed? Is it going to bulk up? Is it going to do anything? And there was a multitude in terms of different answers. Leave it, add fert to it, harrow it, put the cattle in it, put sheep across it, it'll be fine. But it's just not quite as simple as that. So let's have a look at why. So if we look at what this plant has gone through, in the early stages it was growing away nicely, tillering out, producing high quality forage full of protein. It's then gone through a point of stress. As I say, these bottom tillers now are solely focused on these two seed heads, producing all the energy to produce the seed for this plant. If it is that we decide we need to try and fresh page this, get this crop out the way to reboot it, turning livestock into a crop that has gone to seed won't overall do that job for us to restart this crop and give us that fresh page. All livestock are going to do are go in and graze these bottom tillers. That's all they're going to be interested in. They'll leave these seed heads there. But this plant, regardless of whether it has these tillers at the bottom or not, is only focused on these seed heads. Until these seed heads are gone, we do not change the diversion of thought, requirement and overall performance from this plant away from its stress reaction into seed. In fact, the majority of crops that are managed in this way through those periods of drought actually go backwards quite significantly. The plant is basically starved of any other form of overall energy that's being brought into it from the tillers that are in the base that aren't there. You'll quite often see fields that have been grazed, these seed heads still wafting about after livestock have gone and perceived to be getting even more drier. It's not necessarily the fact that there's limited moisture, but there's actually limited resilience in the plant to try and recover and go again. So my advice to you, whether it be in a normal year and a crop's got ahead of us, or if it is that we have got these significant periods of stress, especially from a drought point of view, is to manage your crop by managing your seed heads. If it is that you're looking to ensure that you want the maximum quality within your grass mixtures, especially for grazing, focus on the seed heads. As long as they're there, your quality and your performance from that mixture will be compromised. Get those out the way and that plant will soon change its mind again and put all its focus back into producing overall leafy quality forage from these tillers from the base of the plant. So it's simple as that. Get the topper out, take these seed heads out and fresh page and start and go again. Now don't get me wrong, I fully appreciate that at certain times the idea of either topping a grass mixture, grazing a grass mixture, indeed taking a cut of silage well before its time in terms of its optimal performance can feel as though it's a little bit of a waste of time. But actually think of it longer term. Think of it as starting that fresh page to go again to set up ready for the next round, and especially in relation to points of moisture. If it is that you've got a break in the weather, make sure that that management tool, whether it is that you've grazed it, topped it or cut it for a light cut of silage, is done, ready for that fresh page to start and moisture to come in to wash any fertiliser and nutrients and add moisture back into that crop to go again and hopefully succeed from a better footing for the next round. Second cuts have happened since I first started recording this. A little bit behind, probably a week to 10 days where we'd all like them to be because of that broken weather pattern. But ultimately we go again and hopefully look for some better weather for third cut. But overall, these mixtures, the Herbal lays, the multi-species mixtures, whatever you want to call them, have actually performed really well and produced a really good second cut from them after a brilliant first cut. And as I say, even though possibly delayed by perhaps, I don't know, week, 10 days maybe, second cuts have also been taking place. I think in many cases that variability in the year of frustration continues, especially within grass crops, but there has been some good regrowth and there has been some good crops taken if it is that you've been able to be lucky enough to secure some of that moisture from the rain that some regions have had. Not only that, but also whole crop rye, hybrid rye for AD in particular has started, and some of our trials have also begun to be harvested. Hybrid rye as a whole crop is something that we'll cover, but I think I'll probably start that towards the autumn and follow it through for next year. Now, since you last saw me, it seems to have been quite a controversial topic of conversation around rolling maize. This year I've been a big advocate for it. We actually have been advising growers as possibly as we can to consider doing it. This would have been the year to do it. I'm always a big fan of actually just roll for a reason. I don't think there's enough reason given behind rolling necessarily. There's a lot of grassland that's just routinely rolled in the spring, not necessarily a reason behind that. But for this year, the idea of rolling maize for me has been really important, especially in terms of ensuring we retain as much soil moisture as we possibly can during an incredibly dry period. In many cases, we've all had to drill that little bit deeper to ensure that maize has been established into moisture. So why wouldn't you then try and retain as much of that moisture as you possibly could? Yes, I know that compaction is maize's biggest enemy. But if it is that we're concerned about compaction from a ring roller going across a crop, I possibly question the overall weight of the roller. But fundamentally, for a crop such as this that was rolled and many other crops around and about, the reason was moisture. So my advice regarding rolling maize in the future is roll for a reason. If there's a reason, roll it. In actual fact, not only was this crop rolled, it was actually pumped on as well. It was drilled quite a lot sooner than the majority of crops on this farm because it didn't have an overwintered forage crop on it over the winter and taken off at the end of April. It was left bare for significant drainage works to be carried out over the winter. After drilling, we weren't anticipating that significant level of dry weather that we'd all received. Therefore, the seed that had been drilled at only around about 1.5 inches, which is perfectly normal, wasn't into moisture anymore. The crop was just stood still. The seeds weren't even germinating. So actually there was nutritional scope within this ground to give it something extra. The farm where I am today actually separate their slurry. So separated slurry was applied to this before the crop emerged. It actually gave it that little bit extra moisture. It really did actually lift the level of moisture within the soil profile and got it away. And as you can see, the fact it's been rolled and pumped on, it's looking all right, isn't it? One last stop for me today is to actually have a look at the maize plots that I've put in this year. As a business, we have around about 15 demo sites throughout the UK, and this one is the one that's local to me here in Cheshire. It's actually really important to me to have these in, and also for you as growers. Not only to have access to the likes of these demo plots to look at varieties, existing varieties, new varieties coming through to compare side by side, but also it's actually something that I'd encourage if it is that you're trying a new variety. Not necessarily to have rows and rows of plots like this, but always to have your new variety up alongside your existing variety, at least somewhere on the farm. It's never quite the same having it in a field either side of a hedge. Side by side can give you that clear indication. Also, what you tend to find is that if it is that you tried a new variety for a first time and whatever may happen from a weather point of view, it's very hard to draw that picture as to whether it was the variety or the year that you've been given. Having these varieties side by side like this, to me, has always shown that maize isn't just maize. I spend a lot of time in plots like this, even from a very early age, looking at the likes of early vigour and following those differences all the way up to the harvest period at the end of the year. You can see how varieties react in different situations, their growth habits even the way that they hold their leaves. It's really interesting to see, and you can start seeing the differences of these varieties and also the benefits of the future from a very early stage. Here's a good example straight away. We've put these plots, and we always put our plots in maturity class order. So at the end of the plots here, we're in the ultra early varieties. To the left hand side of the screen is a new ultra early variety. To the right hand side of the screen is an existing good performing ultra early variety. You can see very clearly already the benefits that the new ultra early is bringing over the existing one. So again, something that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see that clearly if it was that there was a hedge in between these and they're in different fields. Again, as we move down the plots into the early varieties, the existing variety in terms of the early sector on the right hand side of the screen and the new variety we're now looking at on the left hand side of the screen. In many cases, the variety on its own on the right hand side would look perfectly fine in a field, but when you compare it side by side with the new pretender up alongside it, you can see where those benefits are coming from. Conversely, limited seed that we had available to us from the breeders of varieties that are probably 3 to 4 years away from the commercial market, again, you're seeing these differences. The variety on the right hand side in previous trials has looked really impressive. However, the variety on the left hand side is looking even better. So even though we did see benefits from the variety on the right hand side, actually the variety on the left hand side could be the one to consider taking forward for the UK market. So just a bit of a snapshot there in terms of what it is that we establish throughout the UK to see how these varieties perform in different regions of the UK, but also under different scenarios, side by side with each other. They're really valuable. They're dead simple to do, but they're really effective. And the information that they can give us can really highlight and benefit varieties not only for today, but also 3 to 4 years into the future. Not only have we got the variety trials in this field, but we've also got a direct drill trial in this field too. Just over an acre was left aside to utilise a Claydon drill that had been adapted to establish maize through the Claydon system. This part of the field was drilled quite a bit later than the rest, but it'll be really interesting to see how this progresses. Could this be another option for growers looking to utilise maize in their rotation, but utilise existing machinery that they already have, especially down the Claydon system? Maize plot update, and I've put my path in. These sorts of types of plots are really valuable to see, as I say, not only a couple of weeks before harvest to see how the varieties compare, but also all the way throughout the season, how they develop and those differences between them. As you've seen in the previous clip, there was differences to see early doors, and even now, a few weeks on, those differences are still clear to see. This crop, as per a lot of other crops, had a delayed post-emergent herbicide applied for all the right reasons. We've seen that staggered emergence of weeds, again, from the conditions that we've received. It's now had its post-emergent and also received a foliar feed within that, and it's really, really glad to have that nutritional bounce to kick it on and go into these brilliant temperatures that we're having, even if it is, for us, a little bit hard work in terms of the hot temperatures that we're now receiving. As per that previous clip in these ultra earlies, comparing the existing variety on the right hand side with the new variety on the left hand side, those differences in terms of development early doors, especially the conditions that we've had this year, are still really clear to see. Again, down the other end of the plots in the candidate varieties, the variety in the middle here is still racing away. It's looked brilliant ever since it's emerged. Hopefully it continues, but it will be interesting to see how the other varieties compare by the time we get to harvest, whether or not they've caught up and made that difference that this variety shows so differently very early on. When it is I'm looking to select varieties for the UK market to take forward, not only is it overall performance and output at the other end of the season, but also their growth habits and their traits throughout the season, and that's what these plots give us. As you can see on the right hand side, the variety looking very different to the variety on the left hand side. The variety on the right hand side is what I would refer to as a more modern variety. The variety on the left hand side is very much more a traditional variety. And what is the big difference? It's the way that it holds its leaves. The variety on the right hand side is a lot more upright. It holds its leaves in a much more of an erect position compared to the variety on the left hand side, which has a much more rolling leaf. Now, many UK growers would much prefer to see a variety that fills those rows as early as possible. You'll get that from that more traditional type on the left-hand side. However, for me, they don't tend to be the most efficient varieties. Those varieties that roll those leaves over are therefore rolling their solar panels over. You don't have as much light ingress. There will be a certain percentage of those leaves that are in shade, but also moisture capture as well. Varieties on the right are able to catch as much moisture and also light ingression as possible, therefore making them much more efficient. They may not look as big and bulky early doors and fill those rows as fast, but ultimately they do give a lot more efficiency from a variety point of view, and the differences are clear to see. So I think it's fair to say that we can already see within the likes of these plots here that's just in a very simple manner, maize isn't just maize, is it? And when you have them side by side like this, you can really see the differences between them. Yes, it's always useful to have one field of one variety, one for another, but to have them side by side, to pull them apart, see the differences in these traits and what they can bring, it's really, really valuable. As I say, I'll bring you along with me and we'll track these all the way through till harvest and look at how they compare to each other. Now, since I started recording these videos, there has been a lot of frustration with this crop behind me, maize, the big emotive one, the one that everyone looks over the hedge at to see how they're growing. And they're really varied, aren't they, at the moment? I think it's fair to say that crops can range anything from this and crops that are still looking like this. And that's really hard to try and establish an understanding around that. But the majority of the time, it's simply just look at the draw this year. Biggest driving factor has been overall moisture availability. How much rain have you received or not received in your region? There's no part of skill, there's no benefit of variety around that. If we don't get rain and the right conditions to keep these crops going, regardless of where you are, the varieties that you're growing, these crops will be staggered and varied. Now, for someone such as myself in a year such as this, it's really hard to try and find that balance, especially if it is that you as a grower, through no fault of your own, has a crop that is struggling. Do you necessarily want to see social media banded with photographs of crops like this? Does it do us any favours? I think it's a really fine balance to get, to see these brilliant looking crops when it is that growers potentially throughout the UK don't have crops that look like this at home. Does that really make you feel any better for those crops that you have that are struggling? But conversely, if it is that we push too much of the negative side of how these crops are struggling, again, does that help the industry, especially from a mental health point of view in terms of looking for the positivities? It is a tricky balance to get, but ultimately in a year like this, we'd all like to have crops like this, but it just doesn't happen like that. We need to work away and find that information and that guidance as to how to get the best of what we have got in such a challenging year. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I have had a lot of conversations with growers who are desperate to look for what they can do to change the way that their crops are developing. Again, fully understandable. But what I would say is that actually having those conversations with growers, the biggest bit of advice that I can give them and what actually benefits them the most is they're not necessarily alone. In many cases, we know that UK farmers work in isolation and therefore not necessarily fully aware that other people, other regions in the industry are also seeing the same issues with their crops as well. Even just having that conversation is as much help to them as any advice that I can give them that ultimately probably won't make any difference. A lot of conversations around moisture with these crops and whether or not vacuum tanking water out onto these crops would make a big difference. But in reality, if we look at 10 mil of rain, that's equivalent to 100,000 litres of water per hectare that needs to be applied to replicate that. As I say, in some cases there is some maize that is yet to even germinate. If it is that that crop receives just about enough moisture from someone applying it manually, if there isn't the moisture in the forecast to keep going, that crop won't keep going itself. Again, it comes back to doing these things that make you feel better that you've tried, but ultimately we just have to sit and wait and cross our fingers. When it is that we do have crops that potentially are at risk of possible failure, or at least massive underperformance, what we can do though is mitigate that by looking for alternatives. At the moment there's a lot of conversations going on and considerations being made to cereal crops. If it is that you're thinking about potentially significant losses in yield for maize and therefore forage for overwinter, whole cropping some of these cereal crops in a year such as this could be the alternative to that. Look at outside the box, look at those other options, look at crops in different ways that may mitigate some of the risks that we have in terms of lack of performance from such a frustrating year. Now, since I started putting this video together, not only has there been a lot going on from a crop point of view, but also lots going on from other points of view as well. One of those would have been the Legends of Logan sale for the Yates family up at East Logan. As a business, we were more than happy to sponsor and support that brilliant day that the Yates family had and the sale that they had on farm. I even took a truck full of customers up and even took the trailer and brought a big red and white cow home as well. So absolutely well done for them on a great day and a great sale. Now, I didn't have this in the videos that I started this sequence with, but I've just called into a reseed that was established this spring, and this is a mixture called Fieldmaster. Now, it's technically a multi-purpose mixture, either cut or graze, but in this scenario it's being utilised in the multi-cut system. We've just actually eased a bit of that power back from the mixture to give us that extra bit of flexibility. Some of these multi-cut mixtures and some of the ability to produce such and manage such good forage from these types of mixtures can create a few issues. We can almost get the silage from them too good, and therefore it can be a little bit tricky to handle, especially from a clamp point of view. By easing back that little bit in terms of the overall potential performance, not only does it give us more flexibility, but it gives us more robustness from the high quality of forage that we're still able to produce. Spring Reseed, around about 100 acres in a block, hasn't been immune to those challenges that we've all faced this spring and summer. But somehow already towards the end of June, beginning of July, it doesn't feel like 5 minutes ago that I started putting these videos together. I'm wondering what to talk about in March, but anyway, time cracks on. As you can see in the background, we've got those perennial little rat bags that tend to pop up in these types of reseeds, in particular challenging conditions, especially when it's dry. The likes of a few thistles, a bit of fat hen, a bit of chickweed in here as well. But again, I did tell you that I'll show you all the warts and all. We're not going to be looking at just picture perfect reseeds that are absolutely pure and clear. But overall, again, as per that SAM 3 reseed, I'm not overly concerned because a bit of a light cut and they'll be done and dusted out of our way. Gee whiz, it's getting hot out there. 29 degrees now. Next up with Cereals event. Brilliant 2 days hosted by Andrew Ward this year, and a brilliant 2 days for Agri and its team on the stand. Great to see so many growers, customers and also new faces joining us for those 2 days. I did actually attend myself on the second day, and I was planning on doing a bit of videoing in, a bit of content from there, and I did start. But then I decided actually, not only was it blowing a hoolie, like it normally happens whenever I try to record things, and wind noise would probably be an issue, but also, I don't know if it was a bit too predictable. There's already been a lot of content, you'll have already seen lots of information and feedback and videos from the Cereals event. And yeah, I just wondered whether or not that is what I'm actually trying to achieve through this video. We will cover breeders, we will cover varieties that you would have seen and technical information that we can give from those varieties. but I think I'll probably do it my own little way. Last quick stop for today, and this is to around about 100 acres of maize that's being grown locally to me, is now part of an Herbal rotation. This farm has given up the use of oilseed rape as its routine break crop and turned to the likes of maize. A lot of farmers locally are in key demand for maize, always looking for more maize to be grown for them, and this provides a brilliant opportunity within Herbal rotations to provide that break crop but also that feedstock requirement in the local area. As you can see, first time growers, and it's a really good looking crop of maize, lovely and green and well through its stages already. 3rd week of June and it's looking knee high already. Great to see. And then next up, 3rd week of June sees the start of our Agri iFarm events. These are regional events hosted throughout the UK to give growers the opportunity to go and see varieties within their regions. Not only meet the specialists and the teams that support those regions, but also the varieties within demo plots and also the technical advice as to how to get the best from these types of varieties in your region. So if it is that you're not already signed up to your regional iFarm demo day, go online, have a look on the Agri website, register your place and get along. So there we have it. Thank you for joining me for what's turned out to be a bit of a mashup video from the last few weeks. Hopefully you've still found it useful and enjoyable, and normal service will now hopefully be resumed just as long as no one else decides to T-bone the telephone connection box at the end of our road. As ever, please do put those comments down below. I do find them really useful in terms of answering any questions that you may have, but also adding to what content that you want to see through these types of videos. I am also now thinking about whether or not I should be doing any shorter clips suitable for other social media platforms. If that's something that you think I should be doing, again, please let me know down below. But until next time, please like, share, subscribe and click that little bell, and bye for now.
I have a feeling that days rain like it can, and it's so hot.